Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Write the Future podcast. I am your host, Beth Barany. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer who loves to talk to other writers and futurists and thinkers about how we can all create better futures for humanity. So I am so excited to have with me today a special guest, Sue Burke. Sue, can you introduce yourself to everyone listening?
I'm a writer and also a translator. I started out as a journalist actually 50 years ago. I was very young. And these days I write mostly science fiction. My best known works is a novel called Semiosis, which is the first one in a trilogy. And it tells a story about some people who come from Earth and they go to another planet. They're going to set up an agricultural colony and they get there and discover that the plants are intelligent. And the thing to know is that many plants do not mind being eaten, but they have things they want in return. And that's true here on Earth.
So cool. I want to start with a focus, which is how can writers implement goal-based research so they know when to stop searching and start writing? And I have to tell you, this is a very common problem. I'm a writing teacher and a coach and an editor, and I hear this all the time, that people love their research so much that sometimes they don't get to the writing part. What's your stance on this?
Well, some of it, of course, comes that having been a journalist, and you have to turn something at 3 o'clock this afternoon, so get working. But when you're doing writing, it helps to be looking for conflict. And by conflict, I don't mean enemies or opponents. What I mean is things that don't work well. Because actually, most things in this world don't really work well. There are problems and conflicts. For example, I have my planet where there's planets and they're intelligent and humans come. When I was doing my research, I discovered it's possible for a planet to be formed such that there's not a lot of iron on the surface. There is on our planet, there's plenty of iron, but there's not maybe on this planet. Plants need iron, the way that plants also need nitrogen and phosphorus and things. On our planet, if plants can't get enough nitrogen, what do? Well, they start hunting animals because we have a lot of that. So, on this other planet, you might have plants that are intelligent and they need iron, and humans show up. And like any other animal, my blood is red because it's full of iron. So now I have a conflict with plants that are willing to cooperate, but they're hungry and we're food. And so that was the basis of the main plant character, is that he's just got a real problem that he can solve creatively. So look for things that are going to cause you a problem. And when you get enough of them, you can stop. Eventually you get a feel for things. But here's one way to think about it. So that, all right, if you're running a novel, a typical novel length, you need about 80 scenes of 1,000 words apiece, give or take. Do you have enough conflict to do that? If you are an outliner or a milestoner, which is what I do, is like, here we have the major plot points. Do you have enough to get from hither to yon? And you can start. And if you fail or if you need more, you can always go back and do more research. But try enough that you're going to take care of that. If you're doing something set in Boston, you don't need to know everything you know about Boston. You might just need to know about one restaurant. And so you can do that a lot easier.
So in terms of research-based conflicts, how can we make sure that we are not falling into cliches? How do we make it fresh in our science fiction and fantasy stories?
One thing I recommend is that if you're really sure about something, look it up, because you're probably wrong. And that's something I learned very early in my career of journalism, is that the things that everybody knows are possibly not right. For example, whales. When did most of the whales get hunted on our planet?
1800s?
Wrong. 1960s. Which is horrifying.
Yeah.
I was alive when they were killing most of the whales. Went wrong. What was going on? So that's one of the things. And if you want to write something about whales, you should probably know that we killed most of them. Another one, Spanish Inquisition. They killed witches, right? No, they did not. There were hardly any witches. They weren't at. In fact, they just pretended they weren't there because there's still witches in Spain. They were after something else entirely. So if you're going to write about that, 5 minutes on Wikipedia, these aren't hard things to find out. But cliches are out there, and if you're really sure about something, you double check. Another thing, why do we have coal on this planet?
Oil.
because plants discovered lignin, and then they started growing, and then there was massive quantities of trees, but bacteria had not figured out how to break down lignin. So that's how we got coal, was that the trees just did not decompose. On another planet, will this happen? Very possibly not, or very possibly something else. So these little details can make you develop a planet that can go in a very different way. Another idea. Okay, so we're going to have a utopia in the future. One of the things that would be really nice, I live in a big city, and we're talking about, well, couldn't we have like free transport, free buses, free airlines? It would be a great thing, and it really would be a good thing for the city. What would happen? I checked out a little bit. If buses are free, they tend to be really crowded because everyone wants to take the bus. Okay, that's good. That's a good thing. So you're having a romance. You're going to have the meet cute that you always have. So it's cute and it's meet. They're on a free bus and it's so crowded they can't get to each other. They see each other and then how do they meet the next time? So you're in a utopia, at least a transit utopia, and people are having trouble falling in love because it's just such a wonderful bus system.
I love that. Have you ever done some research and you're like, oh, that changes my idea of the story completely?
I'm more likely to use shortcuts. Well, so I was trying to create another planet and you got to populate it with animals and stuff. And so I decided I'm going to use drop bearers. Drop bearers are something in Australia that don't really exist. It's something they made up to frighten tourists as one more thing in Australia that's going to kill you. But they don't really exist. But I checked out their lore. They live in trees, then they fall down, they have giant claws, and they kill you. And so I put them on my planet as aliens. There's a shortcut. I also needed more aliens. And Earth ants are really strange and wonderful things. Did you know ants can chirp? They're so tiny you can't hear them. I've seen them do that on my hand and I can't hear them.
Yeah.
But they can chirp. They make all sorts of smells that have very specific meanings. That's how they communicate. They lead complicated lives. A lot of ants are really hairy. And I had some really cool fuzzy aliens that make a lot of noise and smell actually sometimes very pleasant. But it means specific things. So that was just a shortcut. Could have been a rabbit hole, except that there was a wonderful exit from that. A quick way to meet things. Another idea that I should make into a story sometime is that I discovered that what if you went to Mars and you were going to grow plants like that guy in that movie? You can't because there's too much cadmium on Mars. It's a poison that's in the soil. This was actually on Earth poison. If you went back and tried to eat a Tyrannosaurus Rex, you'd die because the meat is poisonous because there's too much cadmium. So if you're going to go to Mars, you're going to have to overcome that. That could be a really interesting story. And the reason I say that is there's a story that I read. It's called The Man Who Bridged the Mist, and it's by Kij Johnson. And it won the Hugo, the 2012 Hugo. And what it is, it's the story of this guy. He's going to build a bridge. Everyone agrees the bridge is the greatest thing. They want that bridge. It's a wonderful thing. There are no villains in this story. It's just that it's really hard to build a bridge. And the story is about how he overcame those problems. And one of them is that he didn't think he could do that, but he did.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to Mars. We're going to clean up the cadmium. It's going to be hard, but we're going to do that. And then we're all going to live there, and there's not going to be Tyrannosaurus Rexes because they're poisonous. So the stories are out there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can have all sorts of fun. Another thing I did. So I wrote a story. It's called Who Won the Battle of Arsia Mons?
Sure.
And it's in Clark's World, November of 2017. And I thought the stupidest thing I could do with robots on Mars is have them get into a fight. There's a battle between robots on Mars, and it's meant as a sport. And so how am I going to do this? So I poked around a little bit and discovered that there is something called robot sumo wrestling. And it started in Japan, but now it's all over. And it's a fascinating little thing. And so they have little robots and they try to fight. And that's basically how I made my fight scenes as I watched some robot sumo wrestling and I copied their fight moves. And it was a lot of fun. But it was also a quick way to get through something that would have been hard for me to figure out. But we had some very fine college students figuring this out for me of how you could make robots try to fool each other in a fighting ring.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. I love how you have an idea, you go research it, and you enhance your problems in the story because of what you discover. What comes first for you, a story idea or noodling around in some area of interest, researching some area of interest?
It starts with an idea. The one with the robots on Mars was just, I saw a meme that said that Mars is the only planet that we know of that is inhabited solely by robots. And then I was thinking about that and I just said, what is the stupidest thing I can do with that idea? So I start with ideas. Other people start with characters, which is fine. I know of one novel that started with the title. You can start with setting, any way that you come at it. The question is, can you deal with that in a way that can be made into a story sometime before you die of old age?
That's right. So, in terms of research, do you take copious notes? Do you just sort of let it wash over you? Like, what are some of the details around that?
I take floppy, horrible notes. And I've been at this for a while and I have this idea that when I'll do enough research to start the story, and then when I get to the part where this is going to happen or they're going to go there, I will research that part, then move on, and then I'll research the next part of it. Yeah, I have the confidence that I will find out the information when I need to do that. I was a journalist and you need to do that or you lose your job.
Yeah. So you have that built-in skill set. So what are you working on right now?
Let's see, I'm writing a story that's a space opera. And as an example of the research, at one point, I needed to have an alien thing that was like slime molds, which are a fascinating thing here on Earth. So I did as much research as I need to write that part of it. And now I'm going to go and write a part where someone dies horribly. And I'm going to need to research all of the ways that you feel bad and survival guilt, because that's what's going to come up next.
When you do this research, are you saying to yourself, I'm going to spend an afternoon, I'm going to spend an hour, I'm going to spend a few days? Do you give yourself any kind of time frame around the research period?
I try to write 1,000 words a day. So that gives me an operational problem of how am I going to do this and also meet my quota. But yeah, as soon as I have enough, I try to go just because I'm old and I want to finish this before I die.
So where can people find out more about you?
I have a website. It's called SueBurke.site, and everything's pretty much linked up through them.
I like to throw a curveball at the end of the interview to folks. I always like to ask, when you hear how to write the future, what does that mean to you?
First of all, a whole lot of fun. The sort of person who thinks more about what's going to happen than what has happened. But I also think that there's a lot of possibilities to write things that could be optimistic. There's lots of problems, but problems can be solved. There's no guarantee that they're going to. But again, from my journalism days, I learned that there's this thing in the city. Can we solve it? Yes, we can. Do we want to? Maybe, maybe not. And that's what I write about that day, is what's going on with that thing.
Yeah. I love that. I love your optimism, and I love that your stories sound fabulous. I want to recommend them to everyone. Check out Semiosis. Sue, thank you so much for coming on How to Write the Future and sharing with us your research process and a little bit about your stories that you're working on. I'm excited to share this with everyone. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yay.